Okay, so now we're doing Unit 4, Chapter 3, Lesson 1. So Unit 4, Chapter 3 is focusing on decimal, percents, and proportions. Lesson 1 will focus on adding and subtracting decimals, multiplying and dividing decimals. So to start off, when adding and subtracting decimals, it is important to maintain proper placement of each value in the correct column. You need to Number 1, line up the decimal points. Secondly, we'll use zeros as placeholders when necessary. And last, we'll add and subtract values in each column. So let's take a look at the first example here. So notice we have 4.3 plus 2 plus 0.79. So the first step is done here for you. We are lining up the decimal points. So notice how the 4.3, here's the decimal, and then the 2, which we turn into 2.00, and notice we use the zeros as placeholders. Since the first decimal, we do have a tenth and a hundredths place, so we want to make sure that we put zeros in those places in order to hold that place value. And then we have 0.79. So this is the decimal that brings us out to the hundredths place. Okay, so we lined up our decimals, and then we're just going to go down each column and add. So 0 plus 0 plus 9 gives you 9. 3 plus 0 plus 7. Well, 7 and 3 gives you 10. So 0, and we have to carry a 1. Oops, I'm sorry. Try to put a dot. That's a dot. Now we add the next column. So we have 0 plus 2 plus 4 plus 1. So 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's how we're getting 7.09. Example 2. So it works the same way if we're subtracting. You want to make sure that you're lining up your decimals using your 0 as placeholders if needed. So we have 76.4 minus 0.13. So notice we lined up our decimals, and we did have to use a 0 after the 4 in 76.4 so that it holds that hundredth place value, because the second value has 3 in that place value. And notice in the 0.13 we added in another 0 because 76 goes up to the tens place. So we needed a 0 in our tens place and our ones place to hold those place values. Okay, so when we're subtracting, you just subtract as you normally do. Notice that I have to borrow 1 from my 4, and that will turn to a 3, and this will give me 10 here. And then 10 minus 3 leaves me with 7. Then from there I do 3 minus 1. I didn't have to borrow. 3 take away 1 is 2. Decimal. 6 minus 0 is 6, and 7 minus 0 is 7. So our answer would be 76.27. Let's scroll down. So now there's some here for you to try, and they're adding and subtracting. Make sure you try out these problems and then check in with your teacher. Model yourself after the 2 examples that I did above. And these are actually already lined up for you, so it should be quite simple. So we're going to scroll down further and talk about when multiplying decimals. What do we do? So the first step will be count the number of decimal places for each value, and the sum will be the number of decimal places you need in your solution. That's a lot said, so once we go through it, I'll explain. Then we're going to multiply the values as if the decimals are not there. And then lastly, we'll record our solution, and we'll be sure to write our decimal in the correct place based on the sum of the decimal places we found in step 1. So let's look at example 1. We have 3.31 times 0.45. So right away I'm counting my decimal places. In 3.31, I have 1, 2 decimal places. In 0.45, I also have 2 decimal places. See, 1, 2. So that gives me a total of 4 decimal places. So when I record my answer, I know I need to have 4 decimal places. And I'm sorry, I think I was counting that the wrong way for you to see. So boom, boom, that's 2. Boom, boom, that's 2. Okay. So now I'm just going to multiply like the decimals are not there. So 5 times 1 gives me 5. 5 times 3 gives me 15. So that's why there's a 5 here. And I would bring up my 1. And 5 times 3 is 15 plus 1 is 16. So that's where this 1, 6 comes from. So that's how we got 1655. Now next I got to multiply my 4 to every number up top. So 4 times 1 is 4. And remember, you want to scoot over 1. So that's why the 4 is here. Now 4 times 3 is 12. 2, bring up your 1. And 4 times 3 is 12, 13. So that's where this 13 comes from. Okay. So now that I did my multiplying, I'm going to add. So going straight down, and I'll put a 0 there so you can see that that's a placeholder. 5 plus 0 is 5. 5 plus 4 is 9. 6 plus 2 is 8. 3 plus 1 is 4. And then 1, 0, there's nothing here. So 0 plus 1 is 0. Once you write your number, go to the end of it, and remember you need 4 places, 4 decimal places. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why our decimal is placed between the 1 and the 4. So our solution is 1.4895. Let's take a look at example 2. So here in example 2, this is 2 decimal places, and this is just 1 decimal place. So that's a total of 3 places. So after you multiply, then you know you need 3 decimal places. So let's multiply. 2 times 2 is 4, so we put the 4 there. 2 times 3 is 6, and then 2 times 6 is 12. That's where that 12 comes from. Okay, and then you need a 0 underneath the 4 as a placeholder, and we'll start multiplying. 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 times 6 is 18. Add straight down. 4 plus 0 is 4. 6 plus 6 is 12. So 2, bring up your 1. 9, 10, 11, 12. 2, bring up your 1. And that'd be 8, 9, 10. 0, bring up your 1. And that's how you're getting 20. Now, last we need 3 places. So go to the end of your number and you'll jump 1, 2, 3. That's how I know to put the decimal between the 0 and the 2. So my answer then is 20.224. So let's take a look at number 1. I'll do number 1 and you'll do 2 and 3. So I'll start off. 0 times 9 is 0. 0 times 3 is 0. And 0 times 6 is 0. And I'm so sorry, I should have counted my decimal. This is 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place. So my answer when I get there should have 2 places. 2 decimal places. Okay. Let me rewrite my zeros. Now next I have to do my 7 times my 9, and I get 63. And I'll leave a 0 here as a placeholder, and then this is 63. So 3, bring up your 6. 7 times your 3 is your 21. Add in that 6 that you brought up, so that's 27. So let's put 7, bring up your 2. 7 times 6, which gives us 42, plus the 2 that's already there. So 42 plus 2 is 44. Okay. So now, I need 63. Yeah. Okay, so now my next step is to add. So 0, 3, 7, 4, and 4. 2 decimal places, so I'll start here. 1, 2. So my decimal goes between the 7 and the 3, and my answer is 447.30. Okay, try 2 and 3, and then check in with your teacher to make sure that your solution is correct. Let's scroll down, and now let's talk about dividing decimals. To divide decimals, You need to divide the values as if the decimals are not there. Record your solution. Be sure to bring your decimal point straight up into your quotient. So let's do the first one, 2 into 3.6. So I'm acting as if the decimal's not there. 2 will go into 3 one time. 2 subtract 1.6. Put your decimal, bring that straight up. Now 2 will go into 16 8 times. So that's 16. We don't care about the decimal here. 16 take away 16 is 0. So my solution is 1.8. So here you just bring the decimal straight up. Let's look at example 2. 4 will go into 13. Let's see, 4 times 3 is 12. And 4 times 4 is 16. So 3 times. And let's write 12, subtract. That leaves me with 1. Bring down your 0.2. Make sure you put your point there. 4 goes into 12 3 times. And no remainder. So 3.3 is our solution there. So notice how I was sure to bring my decimal straight up. Okay, so now I want you to try some on your own here and then check in with your teacher. Okay, we're going to end at what if the divisor has a decimal as well as what your dividend. I mean your quotient, your divisor and your dividend. I said it correctly, I'm sorry. So now what we need to do here, there's different ways we can approach this. I can eliminate the decimal, and what I would do is scoot this decimal over 1 to the right. But if I do that there, I also have to do it to the number that's underneath just to keep it the same. So when I scoot it over to the right, it's the same thing as multiplying by 10. So think of it as taking the 34.1 times 10. You get 341. And the same thing with what's underneath. 958.21 times 10 gives you 9,582.1. So now I'm going to just divide as normal. I have to see how many times 341, let's see here, 958.21. How many times will 341 go into 9,582 is what we have now. So let's see here. We'll do 341. If I do that times 28, I get 9,548. If I were to do it times 29, 341 times 29, I would get 9,000. So that's 9,889. So that's too much. So let's do 28. 341 times 28. So I'm saying 28 times. And I put my decimal here because there's a decimal behind it. That is an 8. And that gives me 9548. 9548. So now I just have to subtract my 9582. 9582 minus my 9548. And you do have to borrow within there. And I get 34 and bring down my 0.1. So I'm saying how many times, and I can ignore that that's a 0.1 and just say 341 into 341. Well, that'll go 1 time and I'll get the 341 and there's no remainder. So 28.1 is our solution there. Okay. So same thing with example 2. You want to move that decimal 1 to the right. And the same thing with what's underneath. That way you clear out the decimal here. So now I ask myself, 969 goes into 6,783. How many times? So 6,783. And I want to know how many times does 969 go into that number. So let's see. Let's do 969 times 7. You get 6,783, 7 times.